to see everybody out there this morning. I will start off with Director Jennings, would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance? We'll get the flag put up here on the screen. And
be my pleasure. Everyone salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. If we could go to a calling of the roll. Lynette, would you do that? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Just a reminder that this meeting is being recorded and is being streamed live. Just a note to our members of the public participating by phone, they can press *9 if they'd like to make a comment. And to our board members, if you can please mute your devices when you're not speaking, that would be great, just to help assist with not having feedback. Taking roll now, Director Allard.
Here.
Cabalden. Absent. Douglas.
Present.
Flores.
Present.
Frost. Here. Gallardo.
Here.
Thank you. Gore absent. Harris.
I'm here.
Oh, thank you. Jankovich.
I'm here.
Jennings.
Present.
Joyner.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Kozlowski.
Here.
Leahy.
Here.
Lozano absent. New.
I'm here. Lynette Lozano is here.
Oh, you are here. Thank you. I'm sorry about that. Director New.
Here.
Thank you. Anderico.
Here.
Peters.
Here.
Sander.
Here.
Zaragoza.
Here.
Saylor.
Here.
Chenier.
Here.
Lowy.
Here.
Oakley.
Here.
Ballard.
Here.
Thune.
Here.
Tixa.
Here.
Veerkamp.
Here.
West. Absent Vice Chair Samayoa.
Here.
Chair Frericks.
Here.
And ex officio member Benny Paul.
Good morning. I'm here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So we are now going to adjourn as the SACOG Board of Directors and convene as the Capital Valley Regional Service Authority for Freeways and Expressways, so CVR SAFE. Lynette, would you please note for the record any changes from the previous roll call?
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that. I'll just call our two SAFE board members, and if they're here, if they can say, acknowledge as such. Director Nguyen, are you with us? Don't see him. And Director Young? Sorry, not seeing her either. They're both absent. Otherwise, roll call remains as previously stated.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate that. So the CVR SAFE agenda contains the following consent items, both approval of the minutes of the August 20th, 2020 board meeting, as well as the approval of the amendment to fiscal year 2020-2021 budget for CVR SAFE. Is there anybody from the public who wishes to comment on these items, Lynette?
No, I do not have any.
Saylor, second.
We have a motion by Slowey and a second by Saylor. Any additional questions, comments, or discussion on this item? Hearing and seeing none, we will have to go to a roll call vote.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair Frericks. I'll try to be as quick as I can with this. Director Allard?
Yes.
Cabalden? Absent. Douglas?
Yes.
Flores? Director Flores, could you indicate your vote?
He's at the brick.
Okay, I'll come back to him. Gallardo,
Yes.
sorry, Frost,
Yes.
Gore absent, Harris,
Yes.
Jankovich. Dr. Jankovich, could you indicate your vote, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Jennings,
Yes.
Joyner,
Yes.
Kennedy,
Yes.
Kozlowski,
Yes.
Leahy,
Yes.
Lozano,
Yes.
New,
Yes.
Onderrico,
Yes.
Peters, Dr. Peters, could you indicate your vote, please? Okay, I'll come back to her. Sander,
Aye.
Zaragoza,
Aye.
Saylor,
Aye.
Chenier,
Aye.
Slowey,
Aye.
Oakley,
Yes.
Stallard,
Yes.
Kuhn,
Aye.
Tixa,
Yes.
Veerkamp,
Aye.
West, absent. Vice Chair Samayoa,
Aye.
Chair Frericks,
Aye.
and then one more time, Director Flores,
Yes.
Director Peters.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate that. So we're going to now adjourn the CVR Safe Board of Directors meeting and reconvene as the SACOG Board of Directors. So we'll now move on to public communication, and this is the time for anyone who wishes to address the board on an item that does not appear elsewhere on this agenda. Have we received any public comments via email, or is there a member of the public who wishes to participate in the meeting that wishes to comment? Anybody, Lynette?
No, Chair Frericks, we don't have anyone.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. So now we are going to adjourn to closed session. We're going to ask that staff and members of the public be patient as we hold a closed session. Shouldn't take too long. So board, just for a reminder for the board members, we are participating obviously from a secure system. So just stay on the line here, or stay in the Zoom room, and then staff is going to announce when we're ready to begin the closed session. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Chair Fergus. We are currently transferring them over. I will let you know when everyone is in the waiting room.
Thank you very much. And while we're waiting here, we'll just get ready to sort of tee up Kirk Trost, who's going to present the closed session item. But I think we want to get an all clear that that once broadcasting. Let's see.
Yeah, I'm still in the moment just transferring a couple more people out, and then we are ready to meet in closed session.
Thank you. Does any director wish to remove any of the 9 items on the consent calendar today? Not.
Saylor moves approval of the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Zaragoza second.
So we have a motion by Saylor, a second by Zaragoza, I believe, in multiple seconds, but I think that was the first person to second it. Any additional questions or comments at all? And Lynette, is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment on any items on the consent calendar?
No, no public comment.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate that. So we have a motion and a second. Any directors with questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing and seeing none, we will move to a roll call vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Allard, Director Allard, could you please indicate your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Cabalden? Absent Douglas?
Aye.
Flores?
Aye.
Frost?
Aye.
Ialdo?
Aye.
4 absent Harris?
Aye.
Jankovitz?
Yes.
Jennings?
Aye.
Joyner? Kennedy?
Aye.
Kozlowski?
Aye.
Leahy?
Aye.
Lozano?
Aye.
New?
Aye.
Onderrico?
Aye.
Peters?
Aye.
Sander?
Aye.
Zaragoza?
Aye.
Saylor?
Aye.
Thank you. Chenier?
Aye.
Slowey?
Aye.
Spokley?
Yes.
Stallard?
Aye.
Thune?
Aye.
Teeksa?
Yes.
Miracamp?
Aye.
West? Absent. Vice Chair Samayoa?
Yes.
Chair Frericks?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate that. So we are now at the action portion of the agenda. We're going to hear item 10, which is adopting the community design policy framework. And Greg Chu is going to present this item.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm going to share my screen right now. Let me know when you can see this.
We can see it now.
Okay, all right, thank you. Greg Chu on planning staff. The community design program was established in 2004 to try to help implement the blueprint principles when that was adopted. This is part of the bigger regional funding program that has been this subject of discussion in the last couple of months. So what's going on today is this framework or outline describes how the program would work for the next funding cycle, which would be coming up very soon. And if the board decides to approve this, then staff would provide written guidelines to the applicants about how this would work. So with that, the objective of the program is to promote the SACOG blueprint principles in placemaking. The blueprint principles are housing options, transportation options, mix of uses, compact development, using existing assets, protecting natural resources, and quality design. Eligible projects are capital projects that are in the public right-of-way, planning studies, and some project development activities. Most of the monies are state and federal transportation funds, but we do have a limited amount of SACOG managed funds, which are a little bit more flexible. So in cities, counties, and agencies that have the right to use federal transportation funds, including transit districts, are allowed in the 4 county areas, that's Sacramento, Sutter, Yolo, and Yuba counties. Edward and Placer counties have their own programs. So we've now are entering the 9th round of this program about every 2 years. We've gotten lots of feedback. We've gotten lots of feedback over the years, and we've got lots of feedback, of course, in the last few months. So we have 3 substantive changes to this program. First is just to make the application process easier, shorter, simpler. So we're going to experiment with substantially reducing the amount of information that's provided. But at the flip side is for those projects that are shortlisted, we'll interview them one-on-one. That's something that we've done in the past, but more will rely on that interview. The second thing is we'll be there's 2 categories of applicants. There's competitive projects, which are for the bigger amounts of money up to $4 million. But for some jurisdictions, they have a small project. They don't think they compete, whatever the reason is. We have what we call a non-competitive category. And that's, they would get a set aside of money and then agree not to compete in the larger category. So that's what we call the non-competitive. The difference is from last time anybody in the non-competitive got $100,000. This time we're expanding that amount up to $500,000, depending on a couple of factors about their MTP projections as well as the regional housing needs allocation that they received. But it would be increased from, again, $100,000 to up to $500,000 for non-competitive. And third change is, as you've heard in prior board meetings, SACOG's receiving Regional Early Action Planning Grants, or REAP funds. Those are through the state's Housing and Community Development Department. We would put a competitive, we have set aside about $1.7 million for competitive housing planning related activities. It would be under the umbrella of community design, but it would have its own separate process and guidelines. So the timeline for this, this is slightly out of date. So we, if the board approves today, then we would develop and release the guidelines in early November. And the one change we have on this sheet is that it would be applications, the short application would be due in mid-January, not mid-December, just to give people a little bit more time. And then that would push things down. And then the board would see this in today, and we would develop. So with that, the framework provides the outline of how the program would work, and with the board's approval, we would release the guidelines. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions. Also with me is Garrett Ballard-Rosa and Matt Carpenter, in case there's broader questions about the regional funding program.
Thanks very much, Greg. Appreciate your presentation. Are there questions at all from directors or comments? Anybody? I'm not seeing hands yet, so just taking a look here. There's a lot of people to scroll through. Not seen any. Is there, I mean, anybody care to make a motion then on the item? Should we?
Director Titsa, I'll make a motion to approve the item.
Staller will second.
Second by Staller. Is there any public comment on this item, Lynette?
No, no public comment.
Okay, appreciate it. So one last opportunity for directors, questions or comments at all for Greg. Thank you again for the good staff report. I'm not seeing or hearing any. We have a motion and a second. Can we go move to the roll call, please, then?
Thank you. Director Allard?
Yes.
Cabalden? Absent. Douglas?
Aye.
Flores?
Yes.
Frost?
Yes.
Gallardo?
Yes.
Gore absent. Harris?
Yes.
Jankovitz?
Yes.
Jennings?
Yes.
Thank you. Joyner?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Aye.
Kozlowski?
Yes.
Kane, last name is
Leahy?
P-A-Y-N-E.
Sorry, Director Leahy, could you indicate your vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Lozano?
Yes.
New?
Yes.
Onderrico?
Yes.
Peters? Director Peters, could you indicate your vote, please? I'll come back to her. Sander?
Aye.
Zaragoza?
Aye.
Saylor?
Aye.
Janier?
Aye.
Slowey?
Aye.
Spokley?
Yes.
Stallard?
Aye.
Soon?
Yes.
Director Soon, could you indicate your vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Tiksa?
Yes.
Veerkamp?
Aye.
West. Absent Vice Chair Samayoa.
Aye.
Chair Frericks.
Aye.
And then coming back again to Director Peters. Okay, I'll mark her as absent. Motion carries.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate that. We're going to move along now to item 11, which is the approval of the 2020 SACOG Regional Funding Round budget. Matt Carpenter is going to present this item to us this morning.
Oh, good morning, Chair Frericks and members of the board. This item underpins the community design program that you just acted on, as well as the regional program that was approved last month. It really is the next step in launching the new regional funding round. Now, earlier this month, the Transportation Committee unanimously recommended that the board adopt the funding round budget described in your staff report. As background, you should know that this budget has not substantively changed from an earlier draft that was presented to all board committees in August. The estimated revenues are the same, and the recommended costs or budget commitments are also held steady. Overall, there's $194 million we estimate as available for the new funding round. Nearly all of these revenues, you should know though, are from federal and state transportation sources, so they do come with a number of restrictions and reporting requirements. It's also important to remember that these are forecasted revenues that come to the SACOG for future years. They are not already secured and available, so we do our best to anticipate what the level of funding will be. And we also monitor how changes in federal or state policy will impact the level of funding available. So clearly, with an election and a number of other things in play, we may be coming back to you later in a subsequent month with any updates that are relevant for our overall budget. Now we're coming forward this month, to the full board right now, just to see if there are any questions or comments you might have on the details in the staff report. I'm going to pause for just a moment to see if Renee Garcia could please screen share table number 1. Oh, I see it's up. Great. Well, you can see here that this table summarizes well the proposed budget levels and commitments, and I'll briefly highlight some key elements in the table. The table provides recommended funding levels by program and offers a comparison between 2020 to the two last funding rounds. Those two funding rounds were back-to-back. They were both in 2018 and 2019, as you recall. And as with a typical funding round cycle, this 2020 funding round cycle is a 2-year budget. So we expect this will cover needs until the next regional funding round for SACOG that we anticipate would be in 2022. There are 3 budget categories in the table. Project-based programs is the first one, and it's always the largest one. It's because it's broad in terms of the different types of investments that are made. The policy framework the board adopted last month was focused, of course, on that regional program, and it makes up nearly 90% of the competitive funding we expect to release with a call for projects. It's made up of 2 categories for this new funding round. The transformative category, as you recall, this is for system expansion projects and for any capital project or project development request of $5 million or greater. And a second category we're calling maintenance and modernization. It's for non-expansion capital projects and for project development requests that are under that $5 million threshold. As you can see also in that category, that program category, project-based, we do have an innovative mobility program. It's included there, and it is recommended to be funded to the same level as in the prior 2-year period. Staff will be bringing forward a 2-year program policy framework for recommendation in the spring of 2021 that will also include some budget details. And on the next line, you can see there is an investment program we're calling the Rural Urban Connections Federal Funds Exchange. This is kind of a expanded program from what we've offered in the past. It's targeting small communities and rural areas. And these funds kind of provide essentially a non-federal revenue source to implement projects sooner and with fewer delivery complications. Now, moving on to place-based programs, you can see that gray bar. And then in those categories, you see there are 2 programs. These are a bit different from the prior category because they are investments that are really targeting kind of a specific geographic area and are intended to kind of spark the development of compact mixed-use developments. They can also be kind of leveraged towards private investments we expect can happen in those areas. And if you look, you just took action on, of course, on the largest program, community design, that you heard from the details on from Greg Chu. And on the next line is an exciting new program we're calling the Disadvantaged Communities Pipeline Projects. It's a new place-based program. You'll be hearing a bit about it in the context of the Race, Equity, and Inclusion Working Group. That's a later board item today. And we're really excited to see how this program will come together. A lot of the details will be informed from that board working group and other outreach that will roll up into some policy framework and guidelines we expect in early 2021. And then finally, the last gray bar is just for other financial commitments. Essentially, this is where we describe the work that SACOG does. These are for project-based programs and SACOG's kind of financial commitments. So our funds management work, we continue the same practice we've had in the past of programming a very small share of our federal and state funds towards ongoing management and technical assistance efforts. And though because of some of the budget uncertainties we face in forecasting funds, there may be some changes in the total federal funds available and color of money budget shifts. As a result, the final totals for this category will be finalizing later, probably in the spring as we come forward with staff recommendations on the funding round. I'll stop now, see if you have any questions or comments.
Thank you very much, Matt, for the presentation. I want to just check in and see if there are directors' questions or comments at all. There are definitely, the board, has certainly seen this budget before, but wanted to and appreciate the sort of overview from staff on this item. Are there questions or comments from directors? Not seeing any hands go up here at the moment. So yeah, we want to just make sure that we're giving ample opportunity for folks to speak. Are there any members of the public, Lynette, that wish to comment on this item?
No public comment.
Okay, then, well, in that case, thanks again, Matt, for your presentation. Anyone care to make a motion?
Slowey moves the item.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Slowey, second by Spokley. Any additional questions, comments, or discussion? Not seeing or hearing any. So we'll go to the roll call vote. And actually, before we do that, I just want to, Director Peters sent me a note saying she is in the meeting. She voted yes on the last item. She's been having some issues with just the mute button issues and such. So not sure what's going on, but she is present and she did vote yes on the last item. And we'll try and make sure she's unmuted for this one as well. So go right ahead.
Great. Thank you, Chair Frericks, and I'll make sure the record reflects her vote. Thank you. For this item, voting Director Allard?
Yes.
Cabalden? Absent Douglas?
Aye.
Flores?
Yes.
Frost?
Yes.
Dialdo?
Yes.
Gore absent. Harris?
Yes.
Finkovitz?
Yes.
Jennings?
Yes.
Joyner?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Aye.
Kozlowski?
Yes.
Leahy?
Yes.
Lozano? Director Lozano, could you indicate your vote, please? Okay, I'll come back to you. New?
Yes.
Onderko?
Yes.
Director Peters?
Yes.
Thank you. Sander? Director Sander, could you indicate your vote, please? I'll come back to him. Zaragoza?
Aye.
Saylor?
Aye.
Chenier?
Aye.
Slowey?
Aye.
Spokley?
Yes.
Stallard?
Aye.
Thune?
Yes.
Tixa?
Yes.
Beercamp?
Aye.
West? Absent Chair, Vice Chair Samayoa?
Yes.
Chair Frericks?
Aye.
And coming back to Director Lozano?
Aye.
Thank you. And Director Sander? Okay, thank you. Motion carries. I'll mark him as absent.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate that. So we're going to now switch to the information portion of the agenda. So item 12 is the Race Equity Inclusion Working Group update and report out. Jennifer Hargrove from staff is going to present the item, and then I'm going to make just a few very brief comments and then turn it over to Vice Chair or Co-Chair Samayoa for this, to provide some comments as well. I will just say to folks on the item, we have a very short meeting today compared to normal meetings. While this agenda item does say 5 minutes, we would like to have a little bit of a discussion with, as an update and recap of some of the activities that have been happening, but also would love just to sort of get some feedback from directors. So it'll probably be a little more than 5 minutes, but not intending to have, it be sort of, overly long discussion. So, but would appreciate your indulgence a bit. And then after that, we have just a few remaining informational items, and then we'll be good to go for the day. So thank you very much for your indulgence. And Jennifer, please kick this item off for us.
Great, thank you and good morning. I am going to just start my PowerPoint real quick, and thanks for the note on the time because my presentation itself runs just a little over 5 minutes. One sec. Apologies. Oh. Sorry, I do want to get started here, but and I know you can see my screen, but I can't minimize it. Renee, I'm sorry to do this real time. Is there a way I can exit the full screen on my end?
Jen, I can try to run it for you if that might be able to help. I don't know how to fix you in this moment.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you?
Let me share that for you.
Thank you. Apologies about that.
No problem.
While she's bringing that up, I'll just get started. I do want to start with an update on our racial equity audit and the work that the McKinsey MAC group is doing with us. Monica Hernandez is leading this work from the SACOG side and managing the consultant contract. At the last meeting of the board working group on race, equity, and inclusion, Monica gave a brief update on the consultant work, which I will recap today. And then just a quick note to Renee, and if you're on the phone as well, this is presentation number 2 on the SACOG board agenda website. Thanks, Renee. You'll recall that our consultant is working very quickly but thoroughly to research SACOG's operations and programs, as well as holding a number of stakeholder interviews. They are analyzing all of this information and will be reporting out on their findings and engaging in a discussion about this with the Race, Equity, and Inclusion Working Group at the next meeting on November 9th. We hope to use this audit and the input from the working group to inform an equity framework that looks ahead at the work necessary to further integrate race, equity, and inclusion into our work in 2021 and beyond. I certainly don't want to get ahead of the working group, but at this time, staff is anticipating that we would be bringing forward a draft framework to the working group in December, and then potentially to the full board for discussion as well. And next, I'll recap the peer exchange that happened at the last board working group on October 5th. So Renee, if you can switch to the next slide. The agenda and the notes from this last meeting are provided in attachment A of your staff report today. At that meeting, we had William Murdoch, the Executive Director for the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, or MORPC. He was joined by Mayoral Deputy Chief of Staff for the City of Columbus, Don Tyler Lee. MORPC is an MPO, so much like SACOG, engaging in many planning and regional convening activities. The Columbus region is actually a lot like the Sacramento region in terms of size and also spans many of the same geographical landscapes from larger urban cities to suburban communities, as well as rural and agriculturally focused areas as well. So we thought they would be a good peer agency to hear from in terms of their efforts around race, equity, and inclusion. I have a few highlights from their presentation here on the slide. About 5 years ago, MORPC adopted a diversity and inclusion plan. And then in 2018, they followed that up with a local government's working group to really focus on implementation. The working group consisted of local agencies, but also external partners. The working group met over a 6-month period of time to create recommendations for MORPC. And the MORPC board then endorsed all of those recommendations from the working group by way of a resolution. We did not in our meeting get into the details about their recommendation or their framework, but they did mention that it was structured around 5 themes that I'll briefly touch on. First was pipeline to create new efforts for engaging with youth. The second was structure to consider options to add seats to the commission as regional representatives. And then regional training to identify training opportunities for the board. Community engagement to raise awareness of diversity and inclusion and build networks. And then finally, strategic communication to improve understanding and support of increasing MORPC's diversity. Again, we didn't dig into the detail a lot on that, but they did note that they have some shorter term strategies, some longer term, some innovative, some more traditional. So a wide range of things in their framework. And then Renee, if you'd please advance to the next slide. The other agency we heard from and invited to be a part of the peer exchange was SCAG, the Southern California Association of Governments, basically our LA counterpart. SCAG is the biggest MPO in the country, so big, in fact, they are a region with subregions. In total, they represent 191 cities. From SCAG, we were joined by Executive Director Kome Ajise and Board President Rex Richardson, who represents the city of Long Beach. SCAG is in a very similar place as us in terms of intentionally starting this conversation and work around race, equity, and inclusion fairly recently. In July, their board adopted a resolution calling out systematic racism as a human rights issue and a public health crisis. And that really kicked off what will be about a year-long process for them to create a framework for further integrating equity in their work. At a very high level, they described their process as one, acknowledging the issue. And for them, that's the resolution. And in that, you'll see that for them, this is about systems of racism and the impact that has on people. And then second, listening to impacted people. And third, convening the right people and reconciling people's experiences and data. And out of this convening, they have formed a special committee on equity and social justice, which includes board members, but also a range of external agencies and partners. And then the final step would be to catalyze or create the plan that they're working towards and then fund the strategies that come out of their framework. So again, they're working to build this framework and recommendations to present to their general counsel around May of next year. We did not do a deep dive again on what exactly they're doing and how broad their scope is, but during the question and answers, Kome, their executive director, did talk a bit about, a few different things like, considering changing the bylaws, their internal hiring practices, having discussions around social equity and geographic equity. So it does sound like everything is on the table and they are looking at a lot through their effort as well. And then Renee, if you'll advance to my last slide here, I just wanted to highlight a few of the themes that we heard from both agencies that I think we have in common as well, based on our discussions from our working group over the last few months. And that's really that, this work takes time, intention, and commitment. Both of these peer agencies spent or are spending 6 to 12 months to build their framework. And I also just thought it was interesting to note that both agencies very early on formed a working group that they're using to steer this work as well. And that really concludes my presentation of the meeting summary from the last meeting of the Race, Equity, and Inclusion Working Group. I'm happy to answer any questions. Monica is also here if there's questions about the consultant contract, but I will turn it back to you, Chair Frerichs, for your discussion today. Thanks.
Great, thanks so much. We got, yeah, Ricky, go right ahead.
I just want to make sure it's clear that the work in the southern, the folks down in Southern California, that they kind of separated both the Long Beach work that they're doing, and that seems to be going a little faster than what the regional approach is going. So I just want to make sure. I think Jennifer I don't know if you necessarily mix it. I just want to be clear that a lot of that work that is moving forward fairly quickly, that's Long Beach work that they're doing. And they're trying to take on similar work at the regional level, but it's going a lot slower.
Thank you. Appreciate that distinction. A couple quick things, folks. I just would say, so really, there were obviously a number of the folks here on this our board meeting here that participate in the Race, Equity, Inclusion Working Group, about half the board or so, and appreciate that the last session. I think it was pretty important to have sort of presentations by both SCAG, so sort of our LA counterparts, and then also the Mid-Ohio folks, in sort of the Columbus area, for folks that aren't really, maybe as familiar. It actually is very similar to the Sacramento area, both in size and also there are a variety of other, issues, demographics and such that are where there's similarities. So it was pretty telling to see the work that some of our other sister MPOs are doing in different parts of the country, and that clearly some are, we're at this work for a bit longer, and some are similarly just sort of beginning these discussions. But also, I think the key really is that I think we all were in agreement that, this is a necessary, certainly, discussions, but it's also tough and an ongoing journey that's certainly heavy on process. And I think I personally believe there's no sort of easy or fast wins. And that we're not gonna necessarily sort of solve everything in just sort of over the course of a couple meetings. I think also I would say, as you heard in the staff summary, our partners in both LA and Columbus, discussed their near and mid and long-term goals and actions. And I think we at SACOG are currently focused on the near and the long term. Near term, we want to understand, obviously, our starting point through the equity audit. But we know that long term, we want to do, undo historical disinvestment and or exclusion as it relates to our work. And I think that midterm, which will be planned and prioritized through 2021. I think those are just a couple of key points that I wanted to sort of raise myself, but also I want to just, if the co-chair Samayoa has additional comments or thoughts, I want to just turn it over to him, and then we have a few questions that we sort of would like to try to sort of seek input from the board on as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I guess I want to pick up on a couple of things that you said about the necessary work and why is it necessary, and that we have to come to an agreement on that issue. Why is it necessary that we do this work as a region, and that it's going to be tough, and it's going to be an ongoing thing, that it's going to be a long-term thing if we've taken it on us, the first step. But I believe that it's necessary, not for political issues, but it really is, in my mind, for the economic benefit of our region. If we can start looking at places that have been displaced or been left out from resources in the past, or even in the planning process. As I had mentioned in the committee, I live in a county of 70,000 or so folks. So we're a smaller county, but we've got tons of resources, water, electricity, farming. So we're rich in resources, but we tend to have some of the lower levels of income, and they tend to be a lot of displaced poor white people. And it has, and they're the ones with the lack of infrastructure in it. So our diversity in our community has to take a look at all those issues of inclusion, because and in my mind, if we do deal with those situations and we do put together goals and actions and projects and programs and investments, we're going to be better off economically as a region, and we're going to be able to increase our really how competitive we are against other regions in our country or other regions around the world. That they'll see the Sacramento region as the place where people want to invest, because we invested in the people and all people in our region that had been left behind. So I think that's why it's necessary that we take on this work. It is going to be tough, because I think all of us are on a separate journey on this whole kind of spectrum of race inclusion. And we have to, and it's going to have to be ongoing. It can't be a 6 months. So if you choose me as chair next year, I would love to continue this work. But I know it's going to take, more than just my term if it happens. It was going to have to be kind of a long-term embedded commitment within SACOG. So I think we saw some of the data that Brooklyn's provided to us, that it was necessary for us to pay attention to these issues, because if we want to be, again, competitive to attract industries into our region that other folks are competing for, Brookings was pretty clear that it's one of our, weaknesses in many ways, kind of the not having, assuring that everyone is included in the economic benefits that we're receiving. I just want to make sure that we see this again as really hard work, that it's going to be long term, but truly I believe it's necessary, and I hope to continue this work in the future, and hopefully it will continue embedded in our goals and objectives for the organization. And we're gonna have to be humble about it, because we don't know all the conditions that people live in our community and where they're coming from. So I think that's why it's going to be a tough work. And I could tell you that the one thing that I did kind of take from the two organizations that provided presentations is they had to bring people from the outside to kind of help them through the process. So I think it's just going to be process driven. It's going to be, and I hope that we have the strength and commitment to move forward. So I know that I said a lot, but in my mind, it really is necessary work, and we have the opportunity to take a lead in our state on it.
Great. No, thank you. Appreciate that. Those comments, Ricky, and your thoughts on that. Are there sort of, we have a couple quick questions for some folks, but I want to just give directors any opportunity to provide any feedback or comments that they may have from participation in especially like in that last session that we had. Director Cabalden's got a hand raised, and there obviously were a bunch of others there too. So there may be some additional thoughts and questions discussion. Director Cabalden.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to emphasize what you said about near term, midterm, and long term, and where some of our most profound tools are in the midterm section. So oftentimes on issues like this, for short term, we're like, well, we're going to add the word inclusion to page 13 of the active transportation plan. Hey, look what we did. Or long term, which is, oh my gosh, we're going to solve the entire thing. And I don't know if we're going to do that. And both of those are going to be big challenges or worthless challenges for us. And so I think that, the exhortation to really dig deep on those midterm, mid-level solutions is going to be important. The other is, I think what we all know from our own communities is that the process of organizational and even social, but definitely organizational change depends on enthusiasm, on energy, on creativity, and the kind of creativity that only gets unlocked when there's a sense of possibility and hope. So I guess I want to caution a bit about to the extent that we frame all of our conversations like, it's really heavy, it's super hard, it's going to be really hard, it's going to be tough, and it's going to be a challenge for us to have these difficult conversations. All of that's true, but if that's the framing of how we proceed with our work, the chances that we're going to produce something that's really going to rally people to implement the changes that we envision is going to be much diminished. And remember, we're not. This isn't the Thanksgiving table. I mean, we happen to be a set of 31 people who are around the table together, along with our staff and our stakeholders. But we're here as representatives of other institutions. And despite the example of Tom Stallard and me, we can change, right? It's not about just having a conversation about these topics that's going to surface issues between me and Paul Joyner. It's about West Sacramento and Lincoln and the region as a whole. And so we should also not delude ourselves into thinking that we've made a significant contribution solely by having conversations with one another, but really thinking about how we can create the conditions whereby people can get excited about this work in our jurisdictions, that they want to do it, that they're competing with each other to see who's being the most innovative, whether that's Galt or Winters or West Sacramento. And so I really appreciate the task force work and folks really digging in and the support of our consultant team. But I guess I just want to really underscore that that change happens when people are excited about the possibility, and we unlock the part of their brain that's about creating solutions. And we've got to get to that point here in this work too. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate those very much. Any other directors with questions or comments at all right now? I mean, and perhaps there aren't, but I do have just a couple of quick things that I think just to think about. And, if people want to provide some feedback now, that'd be great. If they want to provide it offline, that'd be fine too. Or if you want to just wait and provide feedback for those folks that are part of the Race, Equity, Inclusion Working Group, you could provide it at the next meeting as well too. But just a couple items, we talked about earlier, and if we heard from SCAG in Southern California, regarding declaring racism a public health emergency. Sort of a quick poll or check-in if any cities or counties in the region here have adopted any kind of resolutions or made statements related to these issues. That would be appreciated to hear if there are any folks out there. Also, what were the sort of follow-up actions, if there are any? Curious about what topics of racial, gender, or social equity are of interest to you all. That's another question. What are you folks most worried about as we continue this work? And then also, are there items that you are hopeful about with regard to this work as well? So a couple of different questions there. Again, if folks have any immediate responses, that'd be great. And if you want to just provide those later, that's fine too. But I see Director Zaragoza with his hand up, and we'll see if there's any others as well. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just, one thing I came across in the last couple of days is the California Air Resources Board, and in particular, Supervisor Cerna is actually presenting sort of an equity discussion next week at CARB as they look at their moving towards an all energy future, an all electric future. And it would be interesting to see kind of what California Air Resources Board comes up with. I think this cuts, in both ways as well, because as a region where we do have areas that are struggling and be able to reach some of our goals, that they take that equity idea into consideration as well as we try to meet some of these legislative mandates too. So I'm interested to see what they have to say. It might be something for us to look at as well. And that's supposed to come out next week at their next meeting.
Great, thanks very much. Appreciate that input, Director Zaragoza. Any other directors with Director Soon? Go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Ferricks. I was just listening to the other directors talking, and I wasn't able to make the last meeting, so I apologize for that. But as we wrestle with for how we want to frame the conversation, I mean, I look at it as, okay, why are we the directors on here vested in this? Why are we able to, or should we be able to convince all our communities why this is important for the region? And from my perspective, at its most basic level, it's not just health. It's not just about the quality of life for the demographics we're trying to help, but if we're able to create more opportunities for those individuals to become participants in the larger economy, getting back to the Brookings study and prosperity, we will all benefit. So while you individually or maybe our communities may not specifically feel the challenges that others are going through, if we're able to help those individuals and those groups become greater participants in the economic prosperity for themselves, that will provide economic benefits to the region, and that's where everybody should want that, right? At the very most basic level, I think every one of our communities would want that. So I would just impress upon folks, and when we have engaged in these conversations, the metrics that we're looking for, I think in addition to their own health and prosperity, is what it will provide to the region as a whole by everybody, the all ships rising analogy. And I think if we can latch onto that, communicate that, we'll gain greater traction faster within our different communities within this region. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Sin. Appreciate your comments. Any other folks out there with questions or comments right now, or any responses to the sort of suite of questions that I sort of prompted? Again, doesn't have to result in any answers right now, but just wanted to sort of cast that out there. So. Great. Well, thank you very much again. So Jennifer, just really quickly, do you give just a, less 30-second or less, sort of just next steps, recap that. I appreciate that. And then we'll move on to the next item.
Sure. Yep. At the November 9th meeting of the board working group on race, equity, and inclusion, we'll have the consultant there for a deep dive on their findings from the audit. We'll start to tee up a discussion around prioritization and how do we use that audit to build a framework to hopefully bring back to that committee and then potentially the full board in December. I look at a draft framework for how we move forward.
Great, thank you, appreciate that. Actually, and I apologize, I think Director Frost may have had her hand up. It's not in the, I just didn't see it. I apologize. Sue, would you like to?
Yes. Thank you, Chair Ferrix. Normally I have my smiling face on, but I don't think you want to see my face today. I have 2 black eyes from a tennis accident. And so, but I did want to make a comment. I haven't had my interview. I'm part of that committee, and I think my interview is tomorrow, and I'll look forward to that. I don't know what questions they'll be asking, but one of the conversations that we had in the last committee meeting was around data and demographics and information as it relates to transportation and land use. And I guess the comment, the things that are coming to my mind are like with land use, are there ways that we design transportation infrastructure so that there's equity as far as emergency response can happen, policing can happen more efficiently, communities are safer because of the way they're designed, air quality, you don't have communities that form under big freeways where they're sitting they're living in a place where they are predisposed to different diseases because of the air quality. Is there an economic advantage in the urban areas versus the rural areas where they don't have broadband? Those are the kind of things that those are some of the things that I envisioned as, where this would be going as relates to SACOG. So I'm hoping we're going to be reaching out to maybe Greater Sacramento Economic Council and the Air Quality District, and demographic, looking at demographics, whereby, you know, it will inform, you know, decisions around land use and you know, what are the priorities in the region. I think that, in my mind, is what we're here for. And so I know there was some discussion around this at the committee level, and I'm hoping, I don't know if this consulting group is even looking on that side of things, but I wanted to bring it up just because it was on my mind. And so thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your thoughts and your comments here. I would look to Jennifer quickly, or James, just to sort of respond there in terms of the work that we're also doing in terms of solicitation, feedback from partners, and input from partners like GSEC and the ERIC District, and, you know, Valley Vision and others. So, and I'm not seeing any other hands at the moment other than, so yeah. So go ahead, either Jennifer or James, if you would, please.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think Director Frost, you touched on everything that we want to be working on as well. So the consultant, I wouldn't, they're not an expert in all of those things, right? But they'll be helping us. And I think with staff, the framework we look to bring forward and how we want to look at a work plan for next year will likely include many of those components. And the partnership's definitely important, and many of those stakeholders and others are part of this process right now too.
And Director Frost, just from my vantage point, I really appreciate that. And I know Director Joyner and I have had this conversation about data and substance. And many of you, through the working group on race, equity, inclusion, have emphasized, you know, it's a working group, we want to get to work. And at the same time, I think what we've learned and what we've heard from our consultant, and I just want to make sure that people appreciate this, is to slow down a little bit. So we're going to get this audit in early November, as Jennifer mentioned. And at least in my mind, there's 3 buckets of work here that I think are all tied together, but are relevant to think about. One is the operations of our organization, much as any of our organizations have, top to bottom, you know, HR, recruiting, the culture of the place, the agency itself, number one. Second, I would say, is the board's own table. Director Cabaldan said, you are a council of governments, right? You are actually, I believe many of you individually as local governments are looking at this, have looked at this, are looking at resolutions, of adopted resolutions, are trying to think about how you each approach this. And as a board at SACOG here, I think there's a really good question about, you know, what do you want to do as a board moving forward? This is not something you solve in 6 months. So there's the board piece, and there's the council piece. And then finally, I would say there's the work of SACOG itself, right? And I know there's a lot of interest in data, rather than give you a lot, and I would refer initially to the Brookings report, as Director Samayoa had said, in terms of just the disparities that exist in our region and how that's holding us back economically. But we are talking with GSEC, the Chamber, Valley Vision. I actually just had a great conversation with the Air District and RT and SMUD on this very topic. So we're trying to be intentional. And I know that many of you have asked for a lot, which I really appreciate, but I also just want you to appreciate we're trying to be thoughtful and intentional about this. And I think the speed with which this maybe started back in June, we're taking another look at just being a bit more thoughtful. So I hope that doesn't get you impatient, but it is for a good reason. And I appreciate the discussion this morning.
Thank you, James. And I also just wanted to say, I don't think it's a bad idea to bring public safety and Metro Fire into the conversation around all of this.
Thanks very much, Sue. Yeah, duly noted. I appreciate that. Director Joyner, and then I don't have any other hands after that. Go ahead.
Thank you, Lucas. I hadn't planned on speaking on this today, and I'm not going to go into any real depth. James, I want to thank you for touching on what you did. One of my great frustrations here, as you well know, is there were some assertions and accusations made up front in this of institutional racism, of historic disparities, of past planners being influenced by race. All of that to me calls for data. Show me the record, show me the data. If those things exist, if those things need to be addressed, we absolutely need to address them. But what I've seen with the working group, I think with good intentions, is a march forward without that foundational data to work from. And so I've got great frustrations there. I understand you're working on it, and I appreciate the slowing down until that data can catch up with us. I think for me, I continue to feel as though we need to be aware of who and what we are. We are first and foremost a metropolitan transportation planning agency. That is our major goal. And as I look at the packet, as I hear the conversation, we've gone far afield of that. We are talking as though we are the economic development driver of the region. We are trying to solve social problems. Go back and take a look at what the mission statement is. And I understand, James, that you feel it's outdated, but in the here and now, that is our mission. So I'm frustrated by a lot of this. I would encourage each and every one of you to go back and listen to the comments of our guests from that last working group. I actually requested a transcript of that because I wanted to be able to strip away the smiles and the personalities and get down to the words. There were things said that should be very concerning to all of us. And I'm going to have to paraphrase because I'm going to have to work with my staff to get a transcript of that. One of the things that was said when people got very comfortable was that we are working with systems that are based on racism that are 400 and 500 years old, and that they are working on tearing down those systems. That's really troubling. Correcting disparities, correcting where we find it based on data, behavior that we now find to have been inappropriate is all valid. Tearing down systems, our systems of government, should be disturbing. There were comments made by the representative from Long Beach that immediately said this is not about politics, but then he listed all of the political change he is trying to bring about on the backs of race and equity. So I guess I'm really just venting. I'm very concerned that we're drifting far afield on this, that we don't have the data necessary to really have a conversation. The data, and when I say the data, I mean specific to our region and specific to our organization. I don't mean California-wide, I don't mean nationwide. I just need that data to be able to enter this conversation in an informed way. So forgive me for venting. What I've seen is all of the individuals, the consultants, the other agencies brought in to talk to our working group are already heading in this direction. There has not really been a discussion. There has been folks brought in that are already supportive of the goals that we are being encouraged to enact. So I'll leave it at that. Forgive me for venting. I went on far longer than I thought.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate your thoughts. Do you have Director Jennings? And I also want to see if James had just a response at all to firstly, just one sec, Rick. James, go ahead.
Well, Director Joyner, and as you know, we've had a lot of conversations on this, and I appreciate you being frank in a board meeting. And but I do want to answer, because I think inherent in your comments there is a question about, why are we doing this and where are we going? And while maybe I haven't satisfied your request at the moment for data, I want to tell all of you, and we don't have the answers. We're approaching this being humble and with some humility. But we have 3 goals as an organization that you all have blessed, that you've worked on through 2 successive retreats in the 3.5 years that I've been here. Those goals are economic prosperity, vibrant places, and connected communities. You can't get to any of those goals if you leave people behind in this region. When we hired the Brookings Institution, working with GSAC and our economic partners, the disparities in this region are going to hold us back. Now, can we do something about that as SACOG? I don't know. Is that in the realm more of GSAC and the chamber, perhaps? But that's the question we're asking, Director Joyner, and for all of you. And I think if we don't confront that and we don't confront these disparities, I don't think we'll ever be successful. And that's my very strongly held belief, believing in the future of this place and believing in the potential for this Council of Governments. So I know you've put a challenge out, Director Joyner, and many of you have, and we aim to try to do the best we can to answer that. We're not going to have all the solutions, but I just want to make sure that everybody understands. I am not doing this because I think it's the flavor of the day. I'm doing this because I think this is something that we should acknowledge and understand how to work on, even if that's leading from behind with all of you as local governments and our economic partners in front.
Thank you. Appreciate that response, James. I have got 2 other directors, Director Jennings and then Director Chenier. Please go right ahead.
Director Joyner, I heard you loud and clear, and I'm not picking on you, by the way, because I know that other people are frustrated too. To some extent, I'm frustrated. And as the only African-American on this board, I'm extremely frustrated. I'm frustrated in the system of racism and discrimination, the lack of inclusion, the lack of equity. I'm frustrated in the number of years that it's taken us to get to this point to have this conversation. I too am frustrated in the lack of data. But I also believe in my heart that if we slow down and do this the right way, the data and everything else that each one of us needs in order to be in this place at this time will come to us. And so I'm asking all of us to be patient, even myself, especially myself, to be patient, to bring in organizations like SCAG and the Mid-Ohio group to learn from them and what they did to get to where they are at this point. Still in a process of trying to get to where they want to get to as well. But what gives me hope is the fact that they are moving forward and they have made the decision to move forward in this very important area of race, equity, and inclusion. And I've asked myself the question too, when I look at the mission of SACOG and I look at us being in this area, I can't sometimes justify it, but I can't justify us not being in it because it's so important for the whole region to see what SACOG is doing as far as moving forward. And I look at SACOG as a regional leader that has to be leading in this area so others will follow behind us. And I know we're trying to get it right. And I agree with you, James, that we need to slow down a little bit. And we need to keep the council involved, the board involved in all of the things that we're doing. We have a committee, and I know that, but it's also keeping the council involved in every step of the way so that people don't get more frustrated than they are right now. But my heart is heavy. My heart is heavy because of the lack of progress as it relates to race, inclusion, and equity. And I am optimistic that the work that we're going to do at SACOG is going to make the change that we need, not only for one region, but our entire region and regions throughout this whole state and throughout this whole country. So I'm asking all of us to be patient, to make sure we hear what it is that you need to have in order to be involved and get in with us and to work with us, because we're only as strong as this team is working together. That's our strength. And so the power of this council. And I want to make sure that we realize our power of what we can do to make a difference in this region. So I'm frustrated, but I'm not tired. Okay. And I'll stop there.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Director Jennings. Appreciate your comments. So I have Director Chenier and Director Galdo with hands raised.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, thank you, Rick. As I've done for the last 25 years, I want to support you in the way you're thinking about this. It's really important. We do need to have, we need to move forward with urgency, but thoughtfully, if we can do those things together. I just want to address a couple things. I struggle this. We all should struggle with these questions. There's no question about that. Whether for me, it's at SACOG, it's the work that we're trying to do with the city. It's the work that I'm trying to do with my own organization outside the city boundaries. These are hard questions, and how we approach this to be successful is going to require us, again, to step back, be thoughtful about it, and move forward. I think the data is there. It's clear to me, whether we look at our education system, whether we look at the diversity or lack of diversity in our hiring processes in my city and others, whether we look at who gets what contracts, all of those things play a key role in whether or not as a region we're going to be successful. And we can't be successful in only pieces of the region. The entire region has to be successful for each of us to be successful in our own municipalities, I believe. I think that we need to continuously have this discussion, and I'm really glad that we're having it, about how we move forward. I think for me, when I first got on SACOG, when I first got on the Regional Transit Board, the Sacramento Transportation Authority Board, all of those pieces, I never thought really about transportation in a silo. And I think that's what gets government into lots of problems. When we think about transportation only for transportation, when we don't think about it as moving folks to and from work, to and from school, when we don't think about it as an economic development engine, then we'll fail. And so I do think, with all respect to everyone, I do think this is really part of our mission, because if we're only looking at, getting a person from here to there without thinking about why, without thinking about the context of it, then again, we'll fail. As I started with, I struggle with these questions, and I think that one of the questions asked at our meeting was, what's my responsibility as a member of SACOG? I think it's all of our responsibilities to move this ball forward, and we have a unique opportunity here just to do the right thing, and do it because it's the right thing to do, but also because it's important to our economic success. and our transportation success. So I look forward to continuing the conversation, to hearing from folks who don't think exactly the same way I do, because I think only through those discussions and those conversations will we move the ball forward together. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Chenier. Appreciate your comments. Director Gallardo.
Thank you. I'm enjoying listening to everybody, and I really appreciate the opportunity for us all to hear different voices. The one thing when I've had people ask me is, why is SACOG involved in this? I tell them to look at the paper. And if you read over the last couple of weeks, we are seeing dramatic differences in whose kids are going to school. We have school districts that haven't started. We have school districts that are only online. We have some go 4. That and part of that comes into the transportation piece. Now kids that are going, they only go for a half day. Well, how do they get home when there's no service for them and parents are working? But I also look at the long term. Absolutely, that's an economic. They're starting at the system. When you tie it into what we're doing, planning on transportation, our long range economic impacts from this virus in particular, I think this is really a good conversation for us to have and acknowledge that it's different already just in our 6-county region.
Thank you, Director Galdo. And I'm the one who I just FYI, I turned your video off just to sort of help stabilize the speaking a bit. So thank you for that. Appreciate your perspective and your comments. So I don't have any other hands raised. Any other directors with any sort of final comments? Again, I just, we wanted to have this we'd had this most recent meeting of the working group. We had a board meeting, obviously, very closely thereafter. And so wanted to just have a bit of a discussion with you all. Appreciate your willingness to engage in that. More work ahead, certainly, but I, really, again, just wanted to have a little bit of time to have some sort of questions and back and forth and discussion and dialogue. So I'm not seeing, go ahead.
I guess I just want to thank everyone for the rich conversation. I think it's been a powerful conversation we probably couldn't have maybe even a couple of years ago. Many of us have been in this organization for multiple years, and it's great that we're actually having this conversation. And I'm with Mayor Cabaldan that we need the enthusiasm. So when we get the enthusiasm and we start thinking about the work that we're doing here compared to maybe how many miles did we do for bike month, and start competing against each other and having inclusion as our goals and measuring those things, that I think that'll be a great day. I do want to just state that I really love Slowey's hats. I want a couple of those hats. I don't know if you're like a jazz musician or you go to the bars. I don't know what's going on, but I want a hat like that.
Oh, we can make arrangements, sir.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your comments. So not seeing any other hands raised and such, so we'll move along now. Thank you all again. So just one, so next item is just chair's report. Not actually, I will just add in one quick item from Director Stallard, who had been having some connectivity issues today. Just that want to remind the full board that tomorrow, the 16th at 5 p.m. is the deadline for indications of interest for being considered for the vice chair role for 2021. So if there are folks out there that are thinking about doing that, please let Director Stallard, as the chair of the nominating committee, and or Lynette as well, let either of them know by tomorrow at 5 p.m. Thanks for that. And then any board member reports, any items that folks want to raise? Otherwise, we'll move along to James and his executive director's report, and then we'll be done for the day. Any directors out there with any items they want to raise? Not seeing any. James, go right ahead.
Okay, thank you, Chair Frerichs. Just a couple of things. Obviously, there's a number of things in the report in your packet. You got an updated email yesterday from me Youth Leadership Academy, YLA, we are moving up to that deadline. We want to try to get as many high school students as possible from as many of your jurisdictions as possible. You have all asked for materials, outreach materials. That is in the links there are in my exec report. And if you need any other help getting the word out, please do that, because I think we're down to the last week. I also want to let you know that starting next month, starting in the Transportation Committee, you're going to be hearing about one of our many exciting projects, Next Generation Transit. We had talked about this a while ago. We are now kicking this off, and in November Transportation, you'll hear from our staff basically about what does the future of transit look like for our region, and what should we be doing now, especially now during the pandemic and fiscal challenges and loss of ridership, but to think both in the next 5 years, but to think long term. And I know many of you have had a lot of interest in this topic. And in some ways, I think we are being forced at the moment, our transit providers are being forced into some different thoughts about how to provide service and how to get creative and how to bring riders back, but also how to grow that next generation of riders. So heads up, that's coming in November. And then I just want to close by the last note that was in my email update yesterday. There's a really interesting migration study that is kicking off, Bay Area to the Central Valley to the Sierras. I flagged the Sacramento Bee article from, I believe it was yesterday, on this topic. This is research that's being conducted by UC Davis, USC, and Occidental College. The first survey is out, not for you all, but for your staff. And so if you look at that email, you can just remind your staff, it'd be great to get people. It's really looking at the fiscal impacts of COVID, which may sound very particular and to this moment, but it actually does relate to the longer term impacts of this kind of migration that we all know is already underway. So take a look at that. Take a look at the website for the study, because I think it's fascinating and really important and really timely. And with that, I'll do my best to try to have you actually technically, officially leave the meeting before 11:30 a.m.
Great, thank you very much. Any other directors with any final questions, comments at all? Otherwise, with the remaining items on the agenda are just receive and file. And if there aren't any other additional questions or comments, we will adjourn the meeting. And the next reminder, next SACOG board meeting we held Thursday, November 19th. Thanks very much, everyone. Stay healthy, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye now.